The latest on conference realignment and what would Arizona State University bring to the Big 12 conference? All that is coming up on today's show.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Big 12 podcast. I am your host, Josh Neighbors. Here tonight, Richie Bradshaw, the host of Locked On Sun Devils, all things ASU over there. We have done 3 of these so far. This is the 4th now of looking at the 4 corner schools and asking, hey, what do they bring to the conference? And also, what's their fan appetite for going to the Big 12? But first, make sure you guys subscribe to both Locked On Big 12 and Locked On Sun Devils, wherever you guys get your podcast. Also on YouTube, subscribe, like the videos, leave comments too. Those are great for both shows for commentary, whatnot. Richie, thank you for being here. I know this is a hot topic with the fan bases, and I'll start there because the most interesting part, I think, of realignment right now, or at least the Big 12, Pac-12, the relationship at this point is the Arizona folks that I can tell or that are out there. The Arizona, was it UA? It's UA, right? University of Arizona, or is it Arizona University? UA, right?
University of Arizona, yeah.
Right. Those folks, media fans, they seem to want into the Big 12. They seem to just think that they're a great fit. It makes a lot of sense. Where does the ASU fan base and media come down on this? Do they feel that same sentiment?
Absolutely. I think that there's a much bigger draw to the Big 12 than there is the Pac-12 right now. The Pac-12 is going to be a dying conference. They're losing the LA schools in 2024. There's potentially going to be the 4 corner schools that are going to be departing as well. Oregon and Washington are far from locks to stay there. So I think that ASU fans want to get ahead of the 8 ball and move on before everything completely falls apart. They look at the Big 12 as a really good situation for them to come into and take that next step forward when it comes to things like recruiting and TV sales and stuff like that. Like there's been a lot of issues in the Pac-12 with the rights for the Pac-12 network and for what time things are going to be broadcasted live and stuff like that. There's been all sorts of stuff that has made fans really unsettled with the Pac-12 for a little while. And now with all the rumblings about it potentially collapsing, I think that ASU fans are ready to make that jump. The Big 12 seems like a great opportunity in more ways than one. And more than anything else, I think that the level of competition will definitely be something that entertains them. I know the idea of the Big 12 adding Arizona and oh man, who else are they adding for basketball
ASU,
schools?
Utah. I mean, they could add Colorado, or it's Colorado. They could add Gonzaga. That could happen, obviously.
Yes, Gonzaga. I think Houston's joining.
Yeah.
It's going to be one of the best conferences for college basketball that there is if Arizona State, Arizona, Colorado, and Utah join. Mainly Arizona, but that's the nicest thing I can say about them.
So, in this general situation, I mean, I think if you're an ASU fan, you probably see Brett Yormark out there being so active and, pretty clearly courting those schools. Like it feels good to be wanted. Now, obviously George Kliavkoff wants those schools back in the conference, but he's not really saying a whole lot right now because he's got nothing to present. And so I'm just wondering from that perspective, like where is the confidence level in George Kliavkoff? Because sure, like ASU, they could be a part of media deal, but it's not just about the next one, right? Or this one currently. It's also about the next one. And I mean, any media deal you strike, like great, but you still have to do a next one and a next one and the next one. And I think about Oregon and Washington, and I'm always thinking, they're probably gone. They probably see the fact that, hey, we could even take less money in the Big Ten offers to most of their schools, and even less money there would still be more than the Big 12 and more than the Pac-12 could give us. So what's the confidence level in George Kliavkoff and I guess by extension, the long-term future of the Pac?
Very, very low. I know that bridges had begun being burned with the previous commissioner, Larry Scott, and things seemingly haven't gotten much better. It's just a lot of turmoil in the Pac-12 right now. It's not just the LA schools that are leaving. We talk about the 4 corner schools. We talk about Oregon. We talk about Washington. There's so much movement. I personally am like a Pac-12 doomsday kind of guy, and I think that in 10 years, it's not even going to be a conference anymore. I don't know if the Pac-12 is built to last at this point. And if they keep getting schools plucked, then that's just going to be the end of the conference. But ASU, like you said, they're clearly a university that's wanted right now, and it's good to feel wanted. You feel more confident about yourself. You like the product that you're producing. And Arizona State's got a lot of good young things going for it right now. The basketball program just made the tournament. You got a brand new head coach in Kenny Dillingham for the football team. The best thing that they could possibly do is to continue building their market and start to get outside of the Pacific side of the country and start incorporating themselves more into like the Texases of the world and the Oklahomas, and just being able to really push your boundaries for different recruiting reasons, both in sports and just overall getting kids to go to Arizona State and increase the amount of students that are going there. Like there's a lot of positives with joining the Big 12 right now. And yeah, when it comes to the confidence level of the Pac-12 and the current commissioner and everything else that's going on, it's pretty low.
One quick word from our sponsors on today's show. We are brought to you all by the FanDuel Sportsbook. So if you guys would like to go place a wager on the Arizona State Sun Devils to beat the Nevada Wolfpack Wednesday night, 9:10 Eastern, 8:10 Central, Pacific time, that would be what? We got 6:10 Pacific time on Wednesday night. You guys can go do that. They are currently 2.5-point favorites, -128 your money line. So if you all like to place a wager on ASU or any of the tournament action, you guys can go to the FanDuel Sportsbook right now and do it. I promise you all, when I say this, I mean this. It is the best interface by far when it comes to online sportsbooks. It's just so easy to use, very user-friendly. You know who is playing. There's no Missouri. If Missouri is playing Mississippi, some sportsbooks just put MIS versus MIS. No, there's icons. They have little jerseys for basketball. They have little helmets for college football. You always know who's playing who, which, look, it might sound simple, but that stuff does matter. You guys can go there once again today. FanDuel.com/lockedon. You guys can get your no sweat first bet for up to $1,000 today in bonus bets if you all lose. Once again, no sweat first bet. You guys can do that. FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right. So, Richie, I think you make a great point. I think the one battle the Pac-12 is fighting right now is that a lot of people are like, well, anything's better than the Pac-12 network. And to me, I don't really think you should look at it like that, right? I think it's, if we're looking at it like this, like, well, Amazon's better than the Pac-12 network. Yeah, but what's better than Amazon is being on cable. That is where you want to be right now. And the Big 12 does offer that. And so I think for a school like ASU, especially in football right now, there's a lot of momentum, a new coach in Kenny Dillingham. And I think a lot of people are excited about what's happening there. You want to be seen as many people as possible to get this new image out there. And there's no guarantees the Pac-12 that that's a case. So I think for both football, basketball to lesser, but also if you're going to the Big 12, you're going to be seen. I mean, right? If you're going to play in the Big 12 conference of basketball, it just kind of goes with that. You're going to be seen. And so I think for a program, and I think actually Arizona's in a spot like this too with football, right? With Jed Fish, like those are two programs who want to be seen. They want to be showing what their younger coaches are doing to build up their programs.
100%. You want that exposure. You want to be able to recruit yourself and promote yourself to people across the country. Like Arizona State has been so focused on Southern California, and they're now starting to turn their focus again to the kids in Arizona that are in their own backyards. But what about Texas? Texas basketball, Texas football is like religion, high school football out there. People flock out to Friday Night Lights, and it's broadcast on local television and everything like that. You get that exposure to those kids who probably aren't normally staying up late to watch, hashtag Pac-12 after dark. We love the hashtag. We love how much fun it is. No one's watching these games. You plug yourself into the Big 12, you have a more national audience now. You have better exposure. You have an opportunity to market yourself both to these kids and also to other coaches. Maybe you want to bring them in for replacing guys on the staff and stuff like that. This allows Arizona State to really reach horizons that it hasn't reached probably since joining what was then the Pac-10 back in like the 80s. Like this is a really nice opportunity for the Sun Devils, but also for the Four Corner schools to potentially take that next step forward in their sporting programs, because the Pac-12, while it has definitely prided itself on having basically every sport available, they've got dive, they've got wrestling and hockey, and it's more than just football and basketball in the Pac-12. But football and basketball is what sells. And the Pac-12 hasn't had great products in those two sports in quite some time. Like, you've got Oregon and Utah carrying football in most recent years. USC's back, but they're leaving. Basketball, it's been UCLA and Arizona carrying the rest of the conference. You go to the Big 12 and you've got Kansas, you've got Kansas State, you've got Texas is leaving. I was about to say Texas. You got Baylor, you've got Houston, and BYU. Yeah, there's all sorts of great programs that are in the Big 12 that is going to help promote yourself. And again, get that exposure that is so important right now for these schools, and especially Arizona State, that's turning a new chapter in the history of their sports programs.
What's the relationship? So let's get some more, specific stuff. Ray Anderson, the athletic director at ASU. Not saying right now he is, but in the crosshairs at certain times, right? I mean, obviously his relationship with Herm Edwards was very much focused upon. What do you think when they hired Kenny Dillingham? Obviously a lot of excitement around that. How much involvement do you think he had, and what is kind of his status right now at the school, and also how is he thought of by the fan base?
It's so tough to gauge what his status is right now, because for better or for worse, the president of Arizona State, Michael Crow, is very patient. And I just don't know how short or how long Ray Anderson's leash is at this point. To me, it feels like he's running on fumes. His contract is going to be up in a couple short years here, and then you'll be able to reevaluate moving forward if he even makes it that far. But the Kenny Dillingham hire, to me, feels like a last-ditch effort for him to reestablish himself with the fans and with the community in the Valley that we refer to us as, and getting a good taste in people's mouths again. Because right now, you ask me how the fans feel, they hate him. They truly do. And it doesn't help his case when he hears people talk about him in the crowds and he walks up and starts screaming and yelling at fans. That is not a good thing to do. That is not professional. That's not a good look. You can clearly tell that he knows his job is on the line. And again, it feels like he's on thin ice. I truly hope that's the case, because Michael Crow very much prides himself on having a very highly academic program at Arizona State University. Like, they really pride themselves on their academics more than people realize, because when people think ASU, they think Mill Avenue, they think the partying and all that kind of stuff. They don't think about the great journalism program that they have with the Walter Cronkite. They don't think about the up-and-coming nursing program or the engineering program. There's a lot of stuff that the university values when it comes to academics. But when it comes to sports, it feels like that kind of gets put on the back burner at times. And it feels like Ray Anderson has benefited from that and hasn't had to worry about his job as much. I'm thinking this might be coming to a close sooner rather than later. Hopefully, and I'm not someone who's like, you need to fire this person, but he's got to improve in the product that they're putting out, because if you do, in fact, join the Big 12, sports are going to be more important than ever for you to market yourself. And if you're putting bad products on the field, you got to go. There is no exception at that point. Sports need to start taking a priority for this university if they want to continue to grow and become more recognized across the nation.
So it sounds like you think that if they were to make the move to the Big 12, Ray Anderson might not be the guy who's leading them into the conference.
I only hope so, because I want someone that can reignite this. But again, I'm not saying definitively like Ray Anderson should be fired or shouldn't, or like should be kept or anything like that. I just want the right guy in charge at the end of the day.
Totally fair. That's probably what most fans want too, right? That's what they want. Also along those lines, you mentioned the academics, and the Pac-12 has prided themselves on the high academic level. But to me, it's like come to a fault. Stanford and Cal do not care about their sports. No. Like, Cal has completely thrown in the towel, at least on basketball. They just don't care. They just do not care about basketball. And I mean, Stanford, I think there's got to be a lot of questions about their commitment to men's basketball and to football. And once again, they're very fortunate they have somebody like Tara Vanderveer who's there coaching their women's basketball program. But and they have obviously other sports too, the Olympic sports they do well in. But when it comes to moneymakers, Stanford and Cal have not been relevant in a long time. And while academics is important, there's a certain point, athletics does make the university so much money. And you mentioned a great point earlier, and I mentioned this before, the admissions. Go look at successful athletic seasons and their correlations to the number of kids that are applying to go to those schools. They go hand in hand. Whether it's A&M with Manziel, whether it's Alabama and their recent success in football. I'm sure we can check the TCU numbers here.
Yeah,
You
no
can go look
kidding.
at VCU when they made their basketball run, all of it. And so that stuff's it's not just the television money they bring in. It's not just the $40-50 million you bring in all told in athletics. It is there's a big impact in terms of donor interest, in terms of new prospective student interest, which guys, remember down the line, it ends up being donor interest. Those people go to your school, they graduate from your school, they want to be a part of your school down the line. That's kind of the whole thing.
Future NIL.
Right. Future. Yeah. Obviously NIL considerations as well. And I hate to say this, but like, what academics really matter? And look, I'm a big proponent of the, especially at state schools, your education is usually what you make it. A lot of them have great programs, but you can get a quality education in a lot of different areas of life at a lot of state schools because of the work that you put in, the connections you make, the people you want to meet and strive to form connections with, and the work you put in your own classes. And I think ASU and Arizona fit into that. I mean, we have a lot of large state schools, whether it be West Virginia, whether it be Oklahoma State and Kansas State, Iowa State, UCF, obviously joining, I feel like they fit that bill. And I think a big question I have to you is, at what point do academics matter, but at what point,
Absolutely.
Is it like, what does it mean to be connected to a lot of great academic schools? Where does that get you? What does being connected to Stanford mean? What does it really mean? And what's wrong with being connected to Kansas and Oklahoma State in the end of the day?
Yeah, 100%. And again, to preface it, I want to emphasize your point as well is academics are very, very important when it comes to going to college. Who would have thought? But when it does come to those admissions and getting people to be invested in your school, both for the present and the future, it is about putting products on the field that people are interested in watching. You don't have a football team that's worth watching, then I'm sorry, people like me that are big football fans, if I didn't have a commitment to Arizona State and I'm looking for a school and I know I want to go to football games on Saturdays, I don't want to go to a losing school. I want to go to a winning school. I would look at an Oregon before I would look at a Cal, or if I was smart enough to get into Stanford, I'm probably looking at Yale or Harvard that dominate the Ivy League kind of stuff. There's just so many factors that go into admissions beyond just your academic stuff. Sports truly do matter, whether people want to admit it or not, because the people who don't like sports don't want to tell you that sports matter, but they do matter. And that's going to be a very important decision maker upcoming here for Arizona State and for Arizona and for Utah and for Colorado. If they do decide to jump from the Pac-12 to the Big 12, this is really good news for being able to boost up their sporting programs, increase recruiting to contribute to their sporting programs. You get better recruits for basketball and football and baseball and all that sort of stuff. And like you said, that admission rate goes up. ASU has a 10-win season. Man, you better believe people are going to start coming to ASU. Arizona has a 25 or 28 win season in basketball and they're a number 1 seed. People are going to flock. Utah makes the tournament. Utah wins the Rose Bowl
Back-to-back times. I'm sure Utah's admissions going up right now. Yeah,
they're absolutely going up. Colorado's got Deion Sanders. You can't tell me Deion Sanders isn't bringing kids to that place. This is exactly what the Pac-12, or not the Pac-12, excuse me, what the 4 corner states need in order to take that next step moving forward.
So final question is, do you think it happens? Because I think the one thing that I think a lot of folks in the media have pointed out correctly, it is going to take a brave athletic director to do this. Now, I saw, or actually brave president rather, because they're the ones that end up making the calls. I saw Utah's AD the other day making some comments, and he's like, LOL, whatever. Look, I know they love running the Pac-12, but you guys don't have a television deal, so I'm not sure why scoffing. This is the big problem here. I don't think ASU and Arizona are guilty of this, but that kind of attitude that the Pac-12 has put towards the Big 12 has made the Big 12 kind of want to crush them. And I understand that. But at the end of the day, do you think it happens? Do you think Crow's the kind of guy who'll make that decision? I know you said he's very thoughtful. And look, I think all of the Pac-12 presidents have given ample time to George Kliavkoff. But where do you think this goes? Do you think this ends with ASU in the Big 12?
As Thanos once said in the Avengers, I am inevitable. And I do believe that the jump to the Big 12 is inevitable for these 4 teams. I don't know if it's happening in 2025, like if you sign now, you play 2 more years in the Pac, and then you jump. I don't know if it happens in 2030. I do think that eventually this is going to be a decision that these 4 schools decide to make for themselves, is to, just benefit from a more marketable conference. And the Conference of Champions, it's done these 4 schools very well for a long time. They brought in Colorado and Utah, and the 10 to 15 years that they've been in the conference have been more good than bad to them. And for Arizona and Arizona State, they've been in the conference for 40 plus years, and it's treated them well too. But, sometimes you got to move on and move forward to better opportunities. I hope that, speaking specifically for Arizona State, like I said, Michael Crow really focuses on the academics, but I hope he realizes how important the sports programs are to this team, and that taking them to the Big 12 should be able to increase the product that they're placing on the field, and thus bringing in more revenues, bringing in more admissions, bringing in more NIL and people that are investing in the program, the boosters and all that good stuff. There's too many benefits here to pass up on, in my opinion, which is why I feel this is an inevitable move. I just don't know when it is. I don't know if we're going to hear about this tomorrow, or if we're going to hear about this in 2 years or 5 years. But I do think that this is going to be a move that happens. I feel like putting it in pen. I just don't know a date. I just don't know when.
All right, Richie Bradshaw, where can people find you and your work in all of its variety?
You can find me on Twitter at RichieBrads36. You can find the podcast for the Locked On Sun Devils at LO_Sun Devils. Wherever you're getting your podcast, turn on notifications so you get an update when we post new content talking about the best college in the state of Arizona.
Richie Bradshaw, appreciate your time. We hope we speak to you soon.
Absolutely.